Jamie is with us from the James L. West Center for Dementia Care in Fort Worth. That is the first and most comprehensive center for dementia care in Fort Worth. They're a faith-inspired nonprofit serving people impacted by dementia. And dementia can be, as Jamie will explain, a lot of things. I think most people are most familiar with Alzheimer's, but it's a lot more than there are a lot of different kinds of diagnoses that lead to a situation where they have dementia. They provide personalized, innovative care and support for families, and they also do education for caregivers and healthcare professionals in the community at large. And Jamie is the Vice President of Dementia and Caregiver Education for the James L. West Center for Dementia Care in Fort Worth. And she's got a wonderful presentation. So if you would please hold your questions till the end, and let's let Jamie tell us all we need to know about dementia. Thank you so much for being here, Jamie.
Thank you. I have a really great presentation for you all, of course. I'm going to go through some of it fairly quickly, but I did, Vicki and your team have these slides to share with you all. So if you want to deep dive or you have questions later on about some of the stuff, please feel free to take some of this information and say, gosh, I want to know more about X, Y, or Z, or what in the world did she say? I need to reread that slide because there's a lot of information, and I want to make sure and give you what you need for right now, and hopefully there's plenty of time for questions at the end too. If you'll flip to the next slide. Oh, and that's just about us a little bit. If that's our building here in Fort Worth, if you've ever driven by it and not known what it is, that's the West Center. We've been here for 27 years, and we are a community, but we only take care of people with dementia, whether that's Alzheimer's disease or vascular or Lewy body or Parkinson's, any type of some brain changes that are neurodegenerative. We are able to take care of those people, anywhere from somebody that's in the early stages of a disease all the way up to their end of life. And that's what we do here at the building. And you can go to the next slide. So just real quick, I'm not going to read all these to you. These just came out recently. They're the facts and figures for this year. But when you're talking about Alzheimer's disease and dementia, there are in America alone over 5 million people living with this disease. It is a neurodegenerative terminal diagnosis. So meaning that this person has a diagnosis, will get worse over time. And if they don't pass away from something else, they will pass away from this progressive dementia. Right now, most people that get it are 65 and older. We are starting to see a lot of people that are a little bit younger get dementia as well, early onset Alzheimer's disease or a frontotemporal dementia. And they might be in their late 50s, early 60s that are also living with this disease. It is the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. And for people 65 and older, that population, it's the 4th leading cause of death. So it is a very common disease that we're seeing in the elderly population, but it's not it's not inevitable. It doesn't mean just because you hit a certain age that you're going to get Alzheimer's or dementia. It's not a normal part of aging, is what I'm looking for. But it is unfortunately becoming a common part of aging. And really, if you want to flip to the next slide, we are not, as we are right now, we're not really equipped to handle the influx of people living with this disease. Not the medical community, the hospitals. There aren't enough nursing homes or assisted livings built to handle the influx of people coming in, much less can they afford it, or do they want to go to a community of some sort, right? So a lot of people are doing this at home, and there is going to come a point where they're absolutely going to have help for them to survive, not just the person with the diagnosis, but with their family to survive this disease as well. If you'll flip to the next slide. In this, I just have this on here. We don't know what causes Alzheimer's disease or other progressive dementias. We don't have a cure for them yet. And so there is a growing need with just the rise of people getting this diagnosis. I think I skipped over it. Right now, there's 5 million people living with this disease. In 2050, it's only 30 years from now, the projection is that there's going to be 14 million people living with this disease. And if you'll have taken care of somebody with dementia, which more than likely most of you have or are, you know how difficult it absolutely can be. And that it takes more than just one person to care for somebody with dementia, because it's a 24/7 care support that these individuals need. There aren't any medications that stop the progression or really slow it down. There are some medications that help with symptoms of it, but it doesn't change the disease in any way. So really the best care that we can provide is focusing on what they still have, what still remains, and how can we use the abilities and skills they still have, and how can we facilitate a quality of life for them. And I think at the end of the day, if you ask any of us, if I'm to get sick with a terminal disease, what do I want those people caregiving for to really focus on, right? I want them to focus on what I can still do, what I can still give, and what's my quality of life. You will flip to the next slide. Dementia, so what I've been using it, dementia and Alzheimer's disease are, the words we use them interchangeably quite a bit. And there is a difference, kind of. Dementia is that umbrella term. It's a non-specific definition or a group of symptoms that somebody has that interferes with their cognitive abilities, their social abilities, their really abilities to function every day. And you can kind of see, it's hard to see on the screen right here, but dementia affects most areas of functioning for people. So that includes memory, that includes their mood, it includes their judgment, how they behave. Eventually it'll include their motor movement skills, so their ability to walk or their ability to dress themselves or even feed themselves. It's going to mess with their 5 senses as well. And when I say it changes them, some of it will take it away. I mean, this disease does take away some stuff from people, but it doesn't take away everything. And we'll get into that just a little bit more. But this umbrella term, there are reversible or treatable dementias, and there are progressive dementias. The reversible ones, it accounts for maybe about 8 to 10% of people that are diagnosed with dementia. And really, you ask yourself, when I say the definition dementia, it's a group of symptoms that somebody has. It could be memory loss, it could be their judgment's really off, their personality has changed, they're just more confused than they used to. There's cognitive changes happening that we see, but we want to figure out what's causing those changes. Because if what's causing those changes is a medication interaction, or it's they're malnourished, or they're deficient in some vitamin, then we can treat that cause of that group of symptoms. And you can see those symptoms get better or possibly go away. If the cause of those symptoms is an Alzheimer's disease or a vascular dementia or a Lewy body dementia, then they have a progressive dementia. So really the term is you can have, but I always get this wrong, you can have Alzheimer's disease, but not dementia, or you can have dementia, but not Alzheimer's disease. So one of those phrases is true and one of them is false. If you have Alzheimer's disease, you have dementia. You have the most common form of dementia. There's about 130 different types of progressive dementias. You cannot have Alzheimer's, or you can have Alzheimer's disease. What am I trying to say? I always get this wrong. Maybe I should stop saying it, right? We'll skip it. If you have dementia, you have a progressive, a neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's disease. But you can have the reversible dementias as well. Okay, so really we want to figure out what's causing those symptoms. So it is important, whether it's in yourself or your family or the clients you're taking care of, what's causing the symptoms that they have, right? You can flip to the next slide. And there's a list here of just some of the functions that are included in dementia. Again, it's that memory loss that we do see. It's that short-term memory loss frequently is one of those most hallmark symptoms of the disease. Their thinking, their reasoning is really off. They can't problem solve like they used to, or maybe they can't do just their daily stuff like they used to. And that can be anywhere from driving, they're not driving as well, to not being able to manage their own bank accounts. They're not cooking like they used to. They're still going through the motions and the movements because this is just who they are. But they're skipping, there's something missing, they're not doing it right. And they can be very aware of these changes, or they could not be aware at all of any changes, right? And their ability to pay attention, to concentrate, language skills will go. And this is, there's, can't find the words they're looking for. And I'm talking about everyday common words, right? Their ability to comprehend what we say to them has changed. Personality changes, behavioral changes, and just assessing what their abilities are too changes. You know, oh gosh, I used to not be able to, or I used to be able to do this and now I can't, right? They're not able to see themselves very well like they used to. If you'll flip to the next slide. Looking at this picture, so we have somebody with a normal brain, right? And then somebody with Alzheimer's disease. In this, the picture of this brain is anybody with a late stage progressive dementia. Mm-hmm. And you can see there's a drastic difference in just the size of the brains. The color is even a little bit different. The ventricles are enlarged. You can see there's the gyri, the little crevices on the cortex or the outlaying of the brain. For somebody with the late stage dementia or Alzheimer's, there's more space in between those. I mean, you can see a lot of differences here. The brain has shrunk. And what is happening to somebody with a progressive dementia is there are chemical changes and there are permanent structural changes. The chemical changes, you don't see those, but that's really our chemical changes, or our chemicals are working well when everything's firing, everything's doing right, we can guide it, we can take things in, we can learn, we can write it down, everything's just working well, everything's wiring and working together. So our chemicals and our brains are working well. For somebody with dementia, what you see how these change is sometimes they can and sometimes they can't. And that can change many times throughout the day when they can or they can't, or it can change, gosh, well, you were able to do this yesterday, but you're not able to do it today. So it's not that traditionally what happens is we think they're being stubborn, they don't want to help us, they're just causing trouble for me, right? Without taking into account, well, maybe they really can't do it because of the changes that are happening in their brain. And the cells do shrink, or the neurons aren't working, so the cells within the brain do weaken, they die, and that's what causes the shrinkage or the atrophy of the brain. And we see this, and there is a lot missing, right? But there's also a lot that's still there. And that's what we want to focus on, and what we're going to do some skill building here in a second, and really focus on, well, what's remaining? What can I use that's still there? I have to figure it out. I got to be a detective and kind of figure out what's still there and match what their abilities are to what I want them to do or what I need them to do. Mm-hmm. We do have a basic understanding of how the dementias will progress throughout the brain. But it's so different for each person. You can have two clients with the exact same diagnosis, same age, same gender, same ethnicity, all of that, and the disease is going to affect them differently. Mm-hmm. And really the best definition for a progressive dementia is somebody's gone into brain failure. Mm-hmm. And it has to be that at least two parts of their brain are dying. Mm-hmm. We have the normal brain right here is 3 pounds. Our brain is 3 pounds, a healthy brain. When somebody passes away or has late stage dementia, the brain is 1 pound. So they are losing brain tissue. And we really can't expect somebody with a progressive dementia to be like they were before they had the diagnosis, right? That's not a fair thing for us to expect. But when we don't see the changes, we kind of expect that a lot in just the way that we approach them and how we ask them to do things. So we're going to learn how to do it a little bit differently to match what abilities they have left. So if you flip to the next slide, this is just another picture. Let me see if I can annotate just real quick. Yeah, so right here is the normal brain, right? This area, this is our forehead, okay? And you can just see, I'm drawing a big circle here. This is the frontal lobe, our forehead is. A lot of our reasoning, our judgment, our personality, our impulse control, social graces, manners, it's all up there. Mm-hmm. So if I am living with dementia and it's attacking that area of my brain, or that part of my brain is dying, and I behave inappropriately, or maybe I act out sexually in public because I don't have any filters, and I'm not aware of what I'm doing or how I'm affecting those around me because it's also controlled in that frontal lobe. Well, for the caregiver and the families, that's embarrassing and stressful, to say the least, right? And it's not anything I would have done before, but that's what I have now, right? That's what I have. So that's what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. This area of the brain is our hippocampus area, and this houses a lot of our short-term memory and our ability to learn anything new. People with Alzheimer's disease, we know that that's the part of the brain that it starts at first. So that hippocampus, that short-term memory, is being attacked and being damaged for quite some time. And then you start to see that short-term memory loss. And it progressively gets worse. It doesn't get better. But if I do, I draw this picture here and then I draw a circle over here, well, physically, they are not able to remember what just happened because that part of the brain is gone, right? This is our temporal lobes. You have two of them, a right and a left one. The left one houses a lot of your language, comprehension, speech production. The right one is a lot of rhythm. Mm-hmm. A lot, your counting, your ABCs, music is up here. Another thing that's up here is forbidden words, cuss words, sex talk, racial slurs, insults. What happens in all dementias is that it attacks the brain asymmetrically, meaning it will attack one hemisphere more than the other. And most of the time, it attacks the left side or the left hemisphere more. So you have more losses on the left, which is your language, comprehension of speech and speech production. And you have less loss on the right-hand side, which is rhythm, prayers, meditation, but also those forbidden words. So they're using what they have left. When something threatens them or they're scared or they don't understand, instead of saying, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happening. Can we take a pause, or can you use other words to help me understand? What happens is blank, 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 don't touch me ever again. Because that's what they have, right? And they go into that fight, flight, freeze response. Mm-hmm. If you want to flip to the next slide. This is just a slide to help us understand. Let me clear this. Okay. Just to help us understand what the brain controls, and this is not an exhaustive list of what our brain does, but if you think about it, it controls everything that we do, right? Everything from our personality all the way to controlling our temperature of our body, and everything in between, okay? If you want to flip to the next slide. This is how we should see our clients, right? We took the clinical, more medical part of what lobes control what in our brain, but let's take it to who the individual is, right? My occipital lobe shows me what I see and it interprets all the visual data I'm getting, but as a human being and as an individual, it's what do I see around me and what do I enjoy seeing, right? My sensation, my parietal lobe, I have all the sensations that come in right here, but it also helps me feel the sun on my skin or feel the water as I run my hands through it. Mm-hmm. And my ability to move. I like to dance, to smile, to understand and problem solve and critically think through things. So I want to take this medical, because this is more than just a medical disease that somebody's living with. It's very medical. There's a lot of clinical terms around it, but it's also so emotional and behavioral and social and mental that we have to help and support these individuals. So if you flip to the next slide. This theory of retrogenesis, this is something you can learn more about later, or I'm happy to answer some questions about it. But really, right. It's a suggesting that somebody with dementia is reversing in the, or deteriorating essentially in the reverse order they developed since birth. And how this is important to us as we provide care is somebody is regressing in time, they are losing their memories, right? But they're also losing coping skills. They're losing in certain abilities. Because if you think about it, as I developed, or as human beings develop, I have to learn who mom is. I have to learn how to speak. I have to be taught that. I have to be taught how to use the restroom. I have to be potty trained. I had to be taught that when I don't get my way, a temper tantrum, you can't do that when you're old. So you have to learn different ways of communicating your feelings and controlling your emotions and how to cope when things don't go your way or you feel threatened by something, right? I had to be taught how to dress, not only how to put the clothes on and in what order, but how to match them. So you think about all of these things that we've learned, and you think somebody with dementia is just kind of unlearning those things as the disease progresses. Not a perfect theory, but it's pretty good. So if I think, okay, if they're in this time in their life, so this is their abilities, but also their time of life as they're regressing. They may not think, gosh, I'm the 75-year-old woman where people are coming into my home and helping me with just getting dressed every day and feeding me, right? But what I remember, because I've regressed in time, is that I'm the 50-year-old woman who's about to retire from her job and go travel the world. And this is what I remember, and this is where I'm at. And if you think back to the pictures of the brain, for me as a care partner, to tell her, no, that's wrong. You're not 50. You're not about to retire and travel the world. You're 75 years old. You have Alzheimer's disease, and you need to sit down because I need to help you eat your meal. But if I think about the pictures of the brain, there are actual permanent changes. There's structural changes happening. It's not fair for me to force her into this, my reality. I've got to be where her reality is, because I've got to work with what she has or what he has left and where they're at, right? Because I can't rebuild brain tissue. I got to meet them with what they have left and work with what they have left. So if you flip to the next slide. So it is important that we come at this, am I responding to somebody's distress or am I reacting to a behavior? And a lot of this is on our approach. If you want to flip to the next slide, I can tell you right now, if you have a good approach for somebody, it's going to fix 75% of any problems that you could have had, and it's going to make your time with your client so much better. Because you want to ask yourself, are you there to do to? Are you there to do with? To do for? To just get it done? Are you there to improve well-being? To judge them? To boss them around? Or to guide them? Are you being curious and asking questions? And I mean like, why this or why not that? Are you there to learn from your uh-ohs? Ooh, that didn't work out. Let me try a different way this time. Or is it a combination of those? Because you might think to yourself, gosh, well, Jamie, yeah, I want to do with, and I want to guide, and yeah, I want to try a different way and learn from what didn't go so well. But I also have to get my job done, right? I'm also there because I've been hired to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. So it is walking that balance. But I guarantee you, if we come at it with that approach that we're about to learn, you're going to get what you need to get done way easier and quicker than a more traditional way that we think of. So if you want to go to the next slide. The basics for success are to be a detective and not a judge. And it's really just thinking, let me put myself in their shoes as best as I can. So that's knowing the disease the person is living with. And they might be living with more than just one disease. So they might have dementia, but also diabetes and COPD, right? That's all things you got to consider. And I got to use my approach to them as a screening tool. How are they responding to me? And how do I need to change to help them be better? And that's going to come with visual, verbal, and touch. And it's using their abilities to get them to help me, if that makes sense. If you'll flip to the next slide. First, we want to connect visually. And all human beings, we all take in all data from around us. Y'all are doing it right now. You're taking it in visually first. And then you will take in auditorily, and then we'll take in tactilely or physically, we'll take in all the data. But visually, we are taking in all data first. So we want to connect visually first. And we're going to learn how to do that. But then we want to support and use compassionate communication. And I mean support to continually use that visual connection and help them. But also, what words are we using to support them? Are we using more, we're on a friend, we're here to do this together, we're in this together language? Or is it more of a, you do this, I'm doing this to you, you need to do what I tell you? More bossy language, right? Which one are you going to respond to better? Your client's going to respond better to the one that's more supportive. And then finally, we got to get together. We got to be doing these ADLs or activities or whatever you're doing. We got to do them together. So we're doing with them to get them to get something done, or if we need to move on from something else or to something new. So if you'll flip to the next slide. Most important is, what is your body language saying? Because this communication breakdown, this is true for everybody. This is not just people with dementia. So this is any client you work with, your family members, your coworkers, you name it. All communication is, most of it is body language, and then your tone of voice. A measly 7% of it is your words. I mean, words are important, and we're going to talk about what words to use. But it's really about, what is your body saying? To somebody with dementia and all the changes that are happening, chemically and structural changes that are happening, they will always, no matter what stage of the disease they're in, they will always be able to pick up on how you communicate something while they are processing the content. They might not ever understand the words, but they will understand how you communicate something. That has to do with your body, it has to do with your facial expressions, and it has to do with your tone of voice. It also has to do with how fast you're moving. If you'll flip to the next slide, we'll talk about this. So you really want to, maybe you have to center yourself. Maybe you have to say, gosh, okay, I'm having a hard time. I've got a lot of stuff going on in my life, right? I'm very distracted by what's going on. Maybe I just got off the phone with, my kid, and they're having a hard day, and I'm just so upset, but I'm about to go and help this client. So I might not have to center myself and think, okay, I need to watch what my body's saying. I might need to slow down. And then when we approach somebody, we'll get into this more in a second, we want to be aware of what they're seeing. So people with dementia are seeing the world differently. They're interpreting it differently, but they're actually visually seeing it differently. People with dementia, early stages, it's like they're looking through a scuba mask. So if you want to put on a scuba mask, just put your hands over your face, like in the shape of a scuba mask, and just kind of look around, and you can see quite a bit, but you don't see, your peripheral vision is pretty much shot. You don't see what's to the next, to the side of you. You're not seeing a whole lot, but you still see quite a bit, all right? When you get into the early stage, like late early stage and middle stages, people with dementia are looking through binoculars. So put on your binoculars. And now look around. All right. What are you seeing? You don't see as much. So go back to a scuba mask and then do your binoculars. Scuba mask, binoculars. I mean, the visual field changes quite a bit for somebody. Somebody in the very late stages of the disease, they're seeing through a monocular. So they're just seeing one. That changes my visual field, and we have to be aware of what just the visual field they have, because generally what happens when we're caring for somebody with dementia, and a lot of this, my approach, where we start dictates how it's going to end. And if we startle somebody because we come up to the side from them, right? Or we hover over them like this, okay? Or I come in and I'm off to the side, but then it's all of a sudden, hi, John, how are you? We think we're being helpful. And for our body, it's more comfortable because it's just traditionally how we've done it. For them, it scares the snot out of them. If you've ever done it and you've seen them flinch, or somebody might hit you back, or they might say, shit, what the? all of those has happened to me. That's why I can give you the example of them. We have to be aware of that visual field, and that's how they're taking in their data. So we want to be aware of that. I'm going to show you how to get into their visual field in a trusting way here in a second. But once we're in that visual field and they can see us and we look, you know, we're not overbearing or right in their face, right? We're in their visual field. Because honestly, if I'm here and I, like, say you're sitting in a chair and I'm leaning down to talk to you, my face is taking up most of your visual field because the screen looks like you're looking through binoculars, right? My face is right here, my whole body, and I've kind of blocked you in visually. You're not going anywhere because I'm blocking you in, yeah? But if I step back a little bit and kind of position myself, just push my shoulder back a little bit, this is a completely different view for a lot of people. You know, there's this, I'm in front of you, I'm leaning down, I'm talking to you, but then there's, I'm still there, you can still see me, I'm still just as close, but this is way more supportive, less threatening, and I'm not blocking you in. You see a difference? I mean, which one would you rather see when somebody's trying to help you? So let's be aware of that. And when you are talking to somebody, always just start using gestures. It's that visual stuff, because we are going to give instructions. We're going to have some nice chit chat with them. But you always want to start using those gestures, because again, it's the visual. They're trying to process the content. They may not get it, or it's going to take them a lot longer to process the words, but they're going to be able to get the gestures. So start acting stuff out. You know, if you want them, hey, we're going to go, let's go get something to drink. Yeah, let's take them, because we want to increase their liquids, yeah? Or where you want them to put on their coat. You put on your coat so they can see it, and it's going to click quicker, and they're going to be able to do it. Now, a lot of times if they can see it, they can do it. Or, you know, we're going to go get our hair washed, right? We're going to go wash up. And we just act everything out. It's going to help. Also, one thing to take into consideration is your emotions. Our emotions precede us. If I'm tired, or if I'm sad, I'm frustrated, you can usually tell that on somebody. They don't need to tell you how they're feeling. You can just see it in the way they move. Somebody with dementia, if you're not aware of what your emotions are telling people, somebody with dementia will see that, and they will usually mirror what they see. So if you're acting tired and exhausted, that's what they see, so they can kind of just pick it up and do it. And that's a lot of the times what they do. If you're acting frustrated, even though you're not frustrated with them, they're not going to see it that way. They're just going to see you frustrated. So they're either going to respond in kind or just be frustrated as well. And taking this a little bit further, this whole mirroring thing, in the later stages, it's going to help you connect better with them if you mirror their actions too, even if they're distressed. Because we want to meet somebody where they're at. If they're happy, if they're distressed, or if they're sad, I want to meet them where they're at. And then, because I'm the healthy one, I'm the one with the brain that can change. I'm the healthy one, and I can move that distress or negative emotion into a more positive emotion. But I got to meet them there first. Because if you're distressed or upset about something, and you might not know why, you just have those feelings, and that's generally what's happening with somebody with dementia. They're upset about something, but they can't relate it to what made them distressed. But you're distressed, and then I come up to you, and I'm all happy. Oh, it's good to see you. You need to put a smile on that face. You have such a great smile. Nobody wants that. When you're when you've been distressed and somebody's come up to you like that, what do you want to do? You want to hit them or get out of there, get you out of your face. I don't want to be around you. You want somebody to meet you where you're at. So come up and look concerned, and you have that connection with them. If you'll go to the next slide, please. The next thing we want to do, we can go to the next slide. Yeah. Oh, next slide, sorry. Move through this quicker, is we want to watch what our voice is saying. So this is our tone of voice, right? If you're going to look concerned, you need to have a concerned tone of voice. If you're going to look happy, you need to have a happy tone of voice. You're going to look frustrated. You need to have frustrated or annoyed tone of voice, right? When we approach somebody, because I want to mirror what they're doing so I can meet them. And what I'm doing by mirroring them is I'm telling them that I hear you and I see you. And that's what's missing so much when somebody caring for somebody with dementia is they don't feel heard or seen. Because a lot of the times, and I'm just being frank with you guys, especially in a community setting, and there's a lot of people with dementia in one household, right? You think, oh my gosh, Mr. Smith, I'm going to have to hear that story again. So you see Mr. Smith and you walk past him because you don't want to have to go there again. You don't have the patience. You're too tired. It's the end of your shift. You're exhausted, right? Or maybe y'all just don't mesh well with each other either, right? So they're not seen and they're not heard as much. So we want to meet them, and that's what we're saying. I want to marry you and meet you where you're at. You also have to be aware of how your emotions do change your tone of voice, because when we're bored, if we're in a hurry, it does change our tone of voice, and we may not be aware of it if we're not taking stock or centering ourselves before we go in there. Speak slowly, articulate, especially, if y'all are wearing masks, that's hard because they can't see your mouth. And that's just another layer. It's another challenge to get over for now. But it helps if they can see your mouth. And we want to use validation and empathy and acknowledge, right? Use their words back at them, okay? I have a lady, she's like, I'm looking for I'm looking for it. It's lost. It's lost. They've taken it. I'm looking. So you want to repeat the words. So you're looking for something. Something's lost. You're looking for something. So I'm telling her, I hear you. And I use their same tone of voice, right? And you're looking for something. You're looking for something. Yeah. Could it be this or could it be that? And offer them a choice. You might get both of them wrong, but at least we've narrowed it down. Could it be your drink or is it something else? And then we can start narrowing it down because you're also helping them fix the problem, right? Or meet their need, whatever they're looking for. And other phrases to use, what are they saying? Or what are their emotions saying? Sounds like you're tired. Gosh, ooh, what a hard day. Ooh, this seems like that was really annoying. If you want them to help you with something, and this is the verbiage we want to use, I need your help with this. I could really use your help. Can you show me how you make those cookies? Because I know you are such a great baker. Can you show me how you work in the kitchen? Let's do this together. Can we try this together? It's the words that we want to use. It's not like, I'm here, we got 30 minutes and I need you to get to you in the shower. I'm here to get your bath. Let's go. We need to do this together, right? And if you'll flip to the next slide. Those are some other ways to make a connection. If you need to, y'all might have a great relationship and you've been with your client for years, they know your name, but that's just a way to kind of make a connection if you need to. A shared background, I'm from Louisiana. Have you ever been to Louisiana? Or what's your favorite state? Or, connect with them in that way. A compliment goes a long way, especially one if they value it, if they really like their jewelry or they really like looking good. The feature about themselves that they've liked, put that there. And then complimenting their skills or what their value is, right? You are always so good at just fixing things. I wish I could really use your help. Can you please help me over here with this faucet? And you're going to get more yeses than you are people resisting your care, right? So if you'll flip to the next slide. And this talks about, so just validation. Time is different for people with dementia. And I'm saying they're not aware of how much time has passed. Again, they might be regressing in time. They're living in a different time and what they remember. And it can change within the course of a day. And their mind's playing tricks on them. It really is. They can see a loved one, but they don't know what their relationship is, or they might not know their names anymore. Or I know a lot of families, spouses that at a certain time of the day, you're no longer my spouse. You're either shouldn't be in my house because you don't belong here, or you're just that nice lady that helps me out. So the mind plays tricks on them. What we do know is that making decisions, their judgment, their ability to assess themselves is very limited, or it might even be gone depending where they're at the disease state. But the emotions, while they're different, or they're not as reliable, they're not as in control of their emotions or their feelings, those never are compromised by dementia. They will always be there because our feelings and our emotions are what make us a human being. They're just not as in control of those emotions. And they do revert back to that fight, flight, or freeze response. And those elicit some pretty strong emotions, right? When I feel threatened, I either want to fight or I want to flee, or sometimes I just freeze. I don't know what to do. You'll flip to the next slide. What we want to do to help validate them where they're at. In the early stages, we can say, you know, gosh, that's really upsetting. I'm so sorry that's happened. And we don't really have to rely on the words they're using. It's the emotions. You want to validate the emotion they're expressing, right? And I'm so sorry this is happening to you. Or I'm so sorry that happened. More on the middle stages of the disease, you use this when you can start to reflect their words back, because you will probably need to be more of a detective on what their needs are. When somebody has a behavior, if you will, it's an unmet need. It's just how they're communicating. It's what they have left to communicate with. So we want to kind of use those words, reflect those words back to them, and explore, just watch them. In the late stages, or really in any stage, but the late stage, you want to check out the whole body. Because it could be they have their shoes on the wrong feet and they're uncomfortable and they're acting out, but it's all that needs to happen is their shoes need to be changed. Or they have their pants on backwards or something, right? So it's kind of, you just need to do a full body checkup to see what that unmet need or the underlying need is for their actions. So if you flip to the next slide. Here's some 5 ways to say I'm sorry, because inevitably something's going to go wrong, right? At some point, things are going to, oh gosh, that did not go the way I wanted it to. Or didn't go the way I expected it to. But there are going to be some things that you don't want to do if you really want to help. And one of those things is taking the blame for something, whether you did anything wrong or not. This really helps. So meeting them where it's where they're at with their validation, validating their feelings. And these are just some 5 ways to say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was trying to help. I did not need to do that. I'm sorry I made you feel embarrassed, or I made you feel isolated. I did not mean to do that, and I won't do it again. I'm sorry I made you feel diminished, or I'm sorry I treated you like a child. That wasn't fair to me. I'm so sorry. Or it wasn't fair of me, excuse me. And I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry this is happening. Or I'm sorry this is just hard. And these I'm sorry's go a really long way for anybody. If you said that to me, it would kind of squelch a lot of problems, but especially people with dementia. Because then what you can do is you can move forward from here, if this is what you need to do. If you'll flip to the next slide. So finally, moving forward. Again, and this is physically, because we've connected with them visually, and we're using gestures as support, but also to help, we're gonna move over here, we're gonna do stuff. Verbally, we've connected with them, right? I'm telling you, I've heard you, I've seen you, but I'm also using supportive and validating words, and I'm doing this partner. We're here together doing this. I'm not here to do to you or do for you, because you're perfectly capable of doing as well, right? So we want to do, what I was doing earlier is, this is confrontational but supportive. Make sure our body language is saying, I'm here to support you. We're in this together. And doing a hand under hand. And this is, you go into a handshake and you put your hand underneath theirs. It's not us grabbing them and pulling at them. It's your hand underneath theirs. And this underneath is I'm here to support you. And you're still in charge. Even though maybe we're not doing all the work, they're still involved and they still feel in control. And a lot of your problems are going to go away when they feel involved and feel in control. Mm-hmm. It's also a way that if you have permission to touch them, because you still might not get there to touch them. You visually would come in, we want to touch them. But if you got their hands, you can give them a little squeeze. When palms are touched, it helps it connects more neurons in our brain so they can be engaged easier, and you're also stimulating them. But you can give a squeeze of the hand. You can sandwich their hand, hands in there. Put an arm over their shoulder, hug them if they're wanting more comfort or more touch. And then you can move forward. Whether it's now we're physically able to move into a new environment, which I would say is one of the biggest ways to help redirect somebody, or easiest ways. We're using new words, or maybe we're on to a different activity or to a different focus. Because this activity of me getting you to take a shower, it didn't work out just now, so I need to focus somewhere else for the next 15, maybe 30 minutes, and then we can come back and try this activity a little bit differently and see how you respond this time. I will say, if you don't have a connection with them, don't move forward, because that will just backfire on you every time, because they're going to misinterpret it as something else. So you want to have that connection. If you'll flip to the next slide, I think there's some more examples of what you want to do with, ask for help, offer them choices. If you'll flip to the next slide, one last thing I'm going to get to. Don't ask questions you don't want to hear the answer to. You don't want to ask them, hey, do you want to take a shower? It's about time for that shower. Why don't we do that, and then we can have our ice cream? Doesn't that sound great? And see how they respond, right? If you'll go to the next slide, sorry. I'm not even able to hear my slides. And I just talked about that hand under hand establishes those nerve pathways. It allows you to do with them, set it onto them, and then you're connected physically, right? And when you are in hand under hand, if you're to the side of them, not completely to the side because they're not going to see it, peripheral vision, remember, but you're just kind of to the side. Again, it's that shoulders to the back, or not the shoulders to the back, and you're in more supportive stance in the visual field, they can see you. And if you'll just move to the next slide. Excuse me. It takes two to tango or two to tangle. This is a two-way street. You're just as involved or engaged as they are. You're just as positive, or you have just as a positive influence as they do, just as much as you are also the one that might cause the problem as much as they are, okay? And if you'll flip to the next slide, if it is not working, if you have not made that connection, if they are not responding positively to you, or they're not responding to you at all, then you want to stop, because this is not working the way I wanted it to. I need to back off, right? I need to think this through, and I need to come back with a different approach. It's not that you did anything wrong. I just think, oh, whoa, okay, that's not working. What can I do differently this time? Do I need to slow down? Do I need to take a deep breath, right? Do I need to not just come in and start touching them? Do I need to get permission, essentially, to touch them before I start doing was I doing to them unintentionally? Do I need to do more with them? You got to figure, what am I going to do differently, right? And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It's something slightly different, and see how it works. And if you'll go to the next slide, almost done. For you to be able to do this successfully, you're going to have to take care of yourself, right? Working with people with dementia is great. There are so many joyful moments. You have such a great time, and you can build such a great relationship. But it can also be real. It is real, but it can also be really difficult because they don't have the abilities that they've always had or that we're expecting. Yeah. So things can get out of hand fairly quickly if we're not taking care of ourselves, because our patience level is thin, or our stress level is really high, and we're not able to respond. We're more reacting to things. Know your person is important. Thinking about what abilities still remain, what can I use that they still have, right? I have create and control the environment, and I know you're in people's homes, so there's not a lot of creating and controlling probably that happens. But if an environment, it does need to be familiar and friendly. See, generally have that going for you, but it needs to be functional as well. It's got to be something, if you need them to get in and out of the bed, it needs to be functional for them to do that. But it also needs to be forgiving. So places where they can make mistakes in a safe manner. And then set limits for yourself. And then that just comes down to knowing yourself and taking care of yourself, really. And I think that's the last slide. I'll hit the next one. So, yeah, and just asking yourself, what am I going to do differently to better care for those in my care?